بن سعد ولعن الله شمرا ولعن الله أمة أسلجت وألجمت وتنكبت لقتاله بأبي أنت وعمي بأبي أنت وعمي لقد مصابي وأسأل الله الذي يكرم مكرمه وأكرمني بزكية البصارك مع إمام منسور من أهل بيت محمد صلى الله عليه وآله. اللهم اجعلني عندك وجيها للحسين عليه السلام في الدنيا والآخرة. يا عبد إني أتقرب إلى الله وإلى رسوله وإلى أمير المؤمنين وإلى فاطمة وإلى الحسن وإليك بموالاتك وبالبراءة ممن أسس أساس ذلك وابنى عليه بنيانه وجرى في ظلمه وجوره عليكم وعلى أشيائكم ملأت إلى الله وعليكم منهم وأتقرب إلى الله وعليكم من موالاتكم ونعطيكم من براءة من أعدائكم والناصبين لكم الحق وبالبراءة من أشيائهم وأتباعهم إني سلم لمن صالحكم وحرب لمن حاربكم وولي لمن والاكم وعدو لمن عاداكم فأسأل الله الذي يكرمني بمعرفتكم ومعرفة أوليائكم ورزقني البراءة من أعدائكم وأن يجعلني معكم في الدنيا والآخرة وأن يثبتني عندكم كذب صدق في الدنيا والآخرة وأسأله أن يبلغني المقام المحمود لكم عند الله وأن يرزقني البصائر وعظام الهدى الطاهر الناتج بالحق منكم وأسأل الله بحقكم وبشأن الذي لكم عنده أن يعطيني بمصابيحكم أفضل ما يأتي مصاب بمصيبته مصيبة ما أعظمها وأعظم نزيلتها في الإسلام وفي جميع أهل السماوات والأرض. اللهم اجعلني في مقامي هذا ممن تناله منك صلوات ورحمة ومغفرة. اللهم اجعل محياي محيا محمد وآل محمد ومماتي ممات محمد وآل محمد. اللهم إن هذا يوم تبركت به بنو أمية وابن عاقلتك بعد اللعين على لسانك ولسان نبيك صلى الله عليه وآله في كل موطن وموقف وكفى فيه نبيك صلى الله عليه وآله. اللهم لعن أبا سفيان ومعاوية ويزيد بن معاوية عليهم منك اللعنة أبد العابدين. وهذا يوم فرحت به آل زياد وآل مروان بقتلهم الحسين صلوات الله عليه. اللهم فضاعف عليهم اللعن منك والعذاب الأليم. اللهم إني أتقرب إليك في هذا اليوم وفي موقف هذا وأيام حياتي بالبراءة منهم واللعنة عليهم وبالموالاة لنبيك وآل نبيك عليه وعليهم السلام. اللهم لعن أول ظالم ظلم حق محمد وآل محمد وآخر تابع له على ظالم. اللهم لعن الإصابة التي جاهدت الحسين عليه السلام وشايعت وبايعت وتابعت على قتله. اللهم لعنهم جميعا. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت لفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله عبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر عهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. اللهم خص أنت أول ظالم باللعن مني وابدع به أولا ثم الثاني والثالث والرابع. اللهم لعن يزيد خامسا ولعن عبيد الله بن زياد وابن مرجانا وعمر بن سعد وشمران وآل أبي سفيان وآل زياد وآل مروان إلى يوم القيامة. اللهم لك الحمد وحمد الشاكرين لك على مصابهم. الحمد لله على عظيم رزيتي. اللهم ارزقني شفاعة الحسين عليه السلام يوم الورود وثبت لي كتب صدق عندك مع الحسين وأصحاب الحسين الذين بذلوا جهد دون الحسين عليه السلام. For the departed souls of your beloved loved ones, for Shuhada, ulama, and all those who have nobody to recite surah for them, please recite Surah Al-Fatiha, but before that, ilaw salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
I now invite Sayyid Muhammad Taqi Naqi Shah to give a small youth lecture in regards to Muharram, the ilaw salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا وعظيمنا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع نفوسنا أبي القاسم محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين وأصحابه الغر الميامين. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. أما بعد، يقول الله في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل لا أسألكم عليه أجر إلا المودة في القربى. Today I'll be discussing about the life of Imam Hussain. I'll be starting off with the introduction about the birth of Imam Hussain and go into the relationship with Imam Hussain and Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We start off with the birth of Imam Hussain alayhi salam. Imam Hussain was born on the 3rd of Sha'ban in the 4th year after Hijrah. And he died on the 10th of Muharram in the 61st year after Hijrah at the age of 57. He is one of the most prominent characters in the history of Islam, and there are many lessons to be derived from Imam Hussain alayhi salam. As we know, when Bibi Fatima Zahra, when she gave birth to Imam Hassan alayhi salam, she knew 52 days after she was pregnant again and she was going to have another child. The narrations tell us that when Imam Hassan was born, the Prophet Muhammad, he burst to the house of Bibi Fatima and he was very happy and he was excited. However, when it came to the birth of Imam Hussain alayhi salam, he was very upset as he knew that Imam Hussain's life will end with full of sadness, and the life that will be ended will be remembered by many believers. The first to comment on this was al-Fadl, the wife of Abbas, the uncle of the Prophet. She had a dream and she said to the Prophet, Ya Rasulullah, I had a dream that I seen a piece of your flesh in my lap. Then the Prophet Muhammad said, glad tidings that Bibi Fatima Zahra, she will give birth and the baby will be in your hands. So now, when it comes to the birth of Imam Hussain alayhi salam, the narrations tell us that there were mixed feelings surrounding the Imam's birth. Like normally when a child's to be born, there's a sense of happiness and joy around the family. However, the Prophet Muhammad, he knew that this child's life will end with full of sadness. So the narrations also tell us that the Prophet Muhammad, he came to Bibi Fatima's house, but he was very upset and he took heavy steps. As he came to the house of Bibi Fatima, he said to Asma, he said, Asma, where is my Hussain? So she brought Imam Hussain in his hands and he started to cry. A lot of people say to the Shia, we cry every year about the death of Imam Hussain in Islam. Forget about us crying now. The Prophet Muhammad started to cry before it even happened. He started to cry way before. That is why we commemorate the martyrdom of Imam Hussain every year. So when the Prophet held Imam Hussain in his hands, he started to cry. And then Asma said to the Prophet, "O the Prophet of God, why do you cry? As this is supposed to be a sense of joy, a sense of happiness." Then the Prophet said, "This child will be killed and will be slaughtered by an unjust group of people. And may Allah not grant them intercession for what they did." But then the Prophet said, "O Asma, do not tell Bibi Fatima, as Bibi Fatima has just come out of labor. And I don't want her to hear this news." There's also a few narrations when it comes to the naming of Imam Hussain alayhi salam. There's 3 narrations. We accept one of them, but we reject the others. The first one is what? That when Imam Hassan was born, Imam Ali wanted to name him Harb. Harb, what does it mean in English? It means war in English. So then the narration says that Imam Ali wanted to name Imam Hassan war. He wanted to name him Harb. However, the Prophet then said, no, change his name from war to Hassan. Then when Imam was born, Imam Ali wanted to change his name, to name him. He wanted to name him Harb. He wanted to name him war. But the Prophet then said, change his name from war to Hussein. And then the third narration says, when Muhsin was born and the Prophet Muhammad held him, Imam Ali wanted to name him Harb. He wanted to name him war. But the Prophet Muhammad said, no, change his name from war to Muhsin. Why do we reject these 3 hadiths? The first reason is Muhsin was never born. Muhsin was a miscarried child of Fatima al-Zahra. Number 2, if the Prophet tells Imam Ali to do something once, he doesn't do it 3 times. And number 3, there's no better name for Imam Ali to name his son than war. These are names of Jahiliyyah. In Jahiliyyah, there were names as since Shaitan and Zalim and these kind of names because they believed that these were pleasant names to name your children. It was actually Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
who named Imam Hussain. There's another narration that says that when Imam Hassan was born, he wanted to name him Hamza and he wanted to name Hussain Ja'far because 2 of them had been shuhada. But Imam Hussain said that we want to name him Hussain. And from that day on, the Prophet Muhammad and Imam Hussain had a major connection with each other. It is proven to be said that if the father and the grandfather are both living in the same house, then the child picks up more from the father the grandfather than he does from the father, because the child looks up to the grandfather more than the father. If we look at the manners of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we can see that he was warm and he was humble to everyone. There are some grandparents in other communities who are always rude, who are always angry, who are swearing the whole day and then asleep at the night. But the Prophet Muhammad taught us to be warm, kind, and generous to others. That is why when Imam Hassan and Imam Hussain seen somebody performing wudu, and this was the opportunity for Imam Hassan and Imam Hussain to go to the person and help him understand that he is doing wudu wrong. Because if it was us, we would see the person and we would say, look at this man, he can't do wudu, look how old he is, he can't practice his prayers properly. But no, Imam Hassan and Imam Hussain seen that the manners of Rasulullah, they can apply it to themselves and to help others. So then they went to the person and they said to him, "Oh Shaykh, you are older than us. Can you see which out of Hassan and Hussein, who's doing wudu right and who is doing wudu wrong?" And once they were finished with the wudu, the Shaykh realized that he is doing wudu wrong. The Shaykh realized and said that it is not you who's doing wudu wrong, it is me who's doing wudu wrong. Look at the manners and the humbleness of Imam Hassan and Imam Hussain, because they could have easily went to the man and said, "You can't do wudu properly, look at your age, you can't practice your prayers." But no, they seen the manners of Prophet Muhammad and they see that we should be warm and humble to everyone. Sallallahu Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala
Please enlighten your heart with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
again, we have gathered here for the 4th of Muharram, the eve of the 4th of Muharram. And we thank Abdullah and Hussain for giving us the opportunity again this year to hold his majalis during these difficult and troubling times. Again, before attending, I urge all attendees and Azadat to adhere to the policy and procedures and familiarize yourself with the policies and procedures here at Hussaini Mission. Obviously, when you come in through the gates and at the door at TNT, if you do have any questions or queries, please do ask the volunteers to clear any misconceptions or any queries. Also, in the hall seating to increase capacity, we have now got rid of the family box and put X's all around. So even if you again come with say father and son or two brothers and you do want to sit together, we advise you to sit along the edges. So one of you can sit on the X and one of you can sit against the wall. That way it will not disrupt the rest of the line. And again, these events and majalises throughout the year, and especially during Muharram, are solely put together with your support. And if you would like to donate towards these majlises, please do see a volunteer and please do donate generously. And again, the membership, please, if you have not paid yet and you are a member, with the beginning of the new year, Muharram, please do renew your memberships. And tonight we will be commemorating the martyrdom of Muslim ibn Aqil, the cousin of Imam al-Hussain. Can I please receive a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad?
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
In Kufa, he calls out my name. In Kufa, he calls out my name. The angel of death for me came. In Kufa, he calls out my name. And if he returns my soul to my creator, I'm scared he'll then search for Hussain in Karbala. In Kufa, he calls out my name. I am Muslim and I have a pledge with Hussain to gather support in Tripoli tyrant's reign. They wrote to us, the people of Kufa, they wrote to us of this tyrant they complain, forbidden on us to from his request abstain. We are the house that grabs the hand of any. We are the house that grabs the hand of any who struggles to stand. Tell the angel of death, I have a duty here. I'm scared he'll then search for Hussain in Karbala. In Kufa, he calls out my name. O angel of death, O angel of death, when for any soul you call, they answer you. At your feet, even tyrants fall. Whereas I'm left no assistance, left me them all. And as upon my head calamities befall, 71 are with Hussain, with me not one remains. If the angel of death knows I have no supporter, I'm scared he'll then search for Hussain in Karbala. Sallallahu alayki ya Aba Abdullah. Sallallahu alayki ya Ibn Rasulillah. With these words, I now call upon our esteemed guest, Sheikh Ibrahim al-Ansari, to the member with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
A second salawat for the love of Imam al-Hassan and Hussein.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
The third salawat for the love of Fatima al-Zahra, who is present in our majlis today, inshallah.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. صلى الله عليك يا مولاي يا رسول الله. صلى الله عليك وعلى آل بيتك الطاهرين ما خاب والله من تمسك بكم وأمن من لجأ إلى حصنكم سادتي سيدي يا أبا عبد الله يا عبرة كل مؤمن ومؤمنة ويا باب نجاة الأمة غريب يا مظلوم كربلاء بأبي وأمي من ذبح من القفاء بأبي وأمي من ذبح عطشانا يا ابن شبيب إن يوم الحسين أطرح جفون النار أسبل دموع هذا العزيز سيدي يا أبا عبد الله يا ليتنا كنا معكم فنفوز فوزا عظيما قال الله تعالى في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنا عرضنا الأمانة على السماوات والأرض والجبال فأبين أن يحملنها وحملها الإنسان إنه كان ظلوما جهولا صدق الله العلي العظيم. Enlighten your majalis and bless this gathering with a salat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali.
Over the past couple of nights, we explained our belief in the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We then moved on to prove the justice of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, explained why there are tests and tribulations, moved on to explain our need for guidance, and then proved the reason for prophethood. And then finally, yesterday, we proved imamah and how it is divine leadership. And we ended yesterday's talk with 3 duties that we have towards our imams, which we learned from al-Banin. The first duty was obeying the imam and servitude towards the imam. The second duty, he remembers.
Love.
Sorry?
Love.
Love, ahsantum, love and compassion towards the imam. And finally, to know that they are our link between us and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and hence give everything in their path, or whatever is given in their path is given in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Today, after proving these 3 important aspects of our religion, aspects of our aqaid, today is going to be more about application, inshallah. How do we apply these 3 aqaid into our lives? And it might be a bit confusing at the start when I talk about the application, and then you will think to yourself, how does this apply to Tawheed or to Nubuwwah or to Imam? But inshallah, then towards the end of today's talk, you will see the exact way it all makes. Today I started with an ayah that talks about trust, amana. It talks about an amana. The ayah says, we have given the trust and offered the trust, inna aradna al-amana, we have offered the trust to the samawat, the skies, wal ard, the earth, wal jibal, and the mountains. فأبين أن يحملنها. They rejected to carry this trust. They didn't want to carry this trust. وأشفقن منها, meaning they feared this trust. وحملها الإنسان, but man, human, took it upon themselves to what? To carry it. إنه كان ظلوما جهولا. Indeed, he, the human, is unjust and ignorant. Now, the first question that comes when reading this ayah is, what is a trust? The trust, according to Al-Mizan by Al-Allama Tabatabai, may Allah bless his soul, he says that trust is the sacred mandate. What is this, O Allama Tabatabai? He says it is the true aspects of religion. It is the good deeds that you do, and it is the sequence of perfection of a human. This is what the trust is in this specific ayah. The second question that comes to mind is, why would Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mention that he offered it to other creations and then we took it upon ourselves to take it? Surely Allah could have just said that the insan, the human, took it upon themselves to carry this trust. Why would he mention these creations? Here Allama Tabai would comment and he would say, this is so that when we read this ayah, we can understand the weight of this trust. Why is that? Because the creation of the earth, the creation of the skies and the earth and the mountains is much greater than the creation of human. How? We recite in the Quran, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لخلق السماوات والأرض أكبر من خلق الناس. Indeed, the creation of the earths, of the skies and the earth is greater, akbar, greater than the creation of human. We think of ourselves to be this big creation, the best creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and though we have the potential, like we said, to be the greatest of creation, but we weren't created the earth and the skies as well as the mountains. Look at their magnificence. They were offered the trust, they were too heavy for it to take it. But the human, who is full of pride, said, no, give it to me, I will take it. So the human would carry it. In fact, it would even mention, like we said, وَأَشْفَقْنَ مِنْهَا. They were scared, they feared it to carry it. But the human said, no, bring it on, I will carry this amana. I will carry the trust. What does the ayah end with? إِنَّهُ كَانَ ظَلُومًا جَهُولًا. Indeed, he, the human, is ظَلُومًا, unjust. Unjust to who? Unjust to themselves. Like we said yesterday, when we sin, it is an injustice to our own soul. It is an injustice against our own self. Jahula means what? Ignorant. Ignorant of what? Ignorant of the punishment that would await us if we don't hold this trust, if we don't hold this amana. This is the meaning and the tafsir of the ayah that we started with. The trust in general can go and can branch off into many other meanings. But like we said, it is a completion, it is the way to completion of a human being. How is that? It is of the signs of a complete human being, and it is of the signs of a person who has complete iman to be both able to hold trust as well as be truthful in what they say. And this is why you find that Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam would be known as as-sadiq al-amin before his ba'tha, before he was sent as a messenger, as the truthful one and the one who is able to keep a trust, the trustworthy one. He was known by these two characteristics before he was even sent as a prophet. And this showed how complete this human was, how complete Rasulullah was. And the most perfect of religions and the final message of Allah, the message which has been perfected by Allah Azza wa Jal, surely it has to be with the most perfect of humans, the one who is able to hold the most perfect of qualities, which are truthfulness as well as being trustworthy. We have a narration from Imam al-Sadiq alayhi afdalu salatu wassalam. This is a very interesting narration. He says, do not look, if you want to know the iman of a person, do not look at the length of the ruku' and the sujood. If you want to know the iman of a person, do not look at the length of the ruku' and the length of the sujood. Why? For that is something they have become used to. And if they leave it, they feel like something is missing. You know, when you're like, I feel like today something was missing. There's something I forgot to do. Salah is one of those things that you become used to. You learn from a young age to stand up in prayer every time the adhan would go off until it becomes something you're used to doing. Unless you build that connection with it, which we will come to, inshallah, very soon. It becomes something you become used to doing. And if you don't do it, you're like, I forgot something. And then you remember, I haven't prayed my prayer yet. And you would go to pray. So you would say it's something they have become used to. So what should we look at, oh Imam al-Sadiq? He says, look at their truthfulness when they speak. And look at how trustworthy they are. These are the two signs of a believer, according to Imam al-Sadiq. Look at their truthfulness when they speak. And look at how trustworthy they are. In fact, Imam al-Sadiq himself says that Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi afdalu Rasulullah accept through truthfulness of what he used to speak and through his trustworthiness. Imagine. What gave Amir al-Mu'mineen the status was truthfulness and trustworthy, and being trustworthy. In fact, he would say that there isn't a single prophet. How many prophets did we have? 124,000. A single one of them, not messenger, a prophet. Not a single prophet was sent to mankind except with two things: trustworthiness and truthfulness. So each prophet came with a message of La ilaha illallah, as we explained, and they had to have these two qualities within their characteristic: being trustworthy and being truthful. And the continuation of the hadith is very beautiful. The hadith says, مُؤَدَّاهِ إِلَى الْبِرِّ وَالْفَاجِرِ. They would act in this manner to the good and the evil. The person who believes, they have to be trustworthy to them. And the person who disbelieves, they also need to be trustworthy towards them. And they need to be truthful to the believer and to the non-believer. And the best of examples we take is from Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. How is that? When Rasulullah would enter Mecca, after he was able to enter Mecca with his people, look at what he did. The first thing he did was he went to the Kaaba, yes? He went to the person who was the key holder of the Kaaba by the name of Uthman ibn Talha. He went to this man and he said to him, he asked him for the keys of the Kaaba. He took the keys. Then he would enter the Kaaba. When he entered the Kaaba, he would purify it from the statues and from whatever they used to worship within it. And then he would leave and he would lock the door of the Kaaba again. Al-Abbas, the uncle of the Prophet, he would come to the Rasulullah. He would say to him, "Oh Rasulullah, give me the keys of the Kaaba so that I can become the key holder of the Kaaba." This at that time, or even today, it is a very high status to be the key holder of the Kaaba, this holy house was a very high status. Al-Abbas seemed to have wanted this status. So he asked Rasulullah, he said, give this key to me so that I can be the key holder of the Kaaba. Rasulullah said, no, I will not give you the keys. So what are you going to do, Rasulullah? He went to Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib. He gave him the keys. He said to him, go back to Uthman ibn Talha and return the keys. Uthman ibn Talha was not a Muslim, he was a disbeliever. And this is the house of Allah we are talking about. The Prophet would order Imam Ali to return the keys to Uthman ibn Talha because he took the keys from him. And then he would recite the ayah, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْمُرُكُمْ أَن تُؤَدُّوا الْأَمَانَاتِ لِأَهْلِهَا. Allah has ordered you to render your trust, to render the trusts and fulfill the trust to its people. Now the trust itself and this amanat that we hold, again will then go and branch into many different branches. One of which is that this earth itself is an amana. This is something we discussed last year. For those who attended last year's majalis, we discussed this last year. So very briefly, I will say, it is stewardship. It is an act of stewardship. This earth, we live on it. It's an amana. We take care of it. As simple as that, I will leave it there, as we discussed that last year. Another thing that is an amana is keeping your promise. Why? Because amana, trust, is nothing but being trustworthy in what you say. And truthfulness is nothing but being trustworthy in your actions. So they come from one root. Keeping promises is an amana. It's a trust that you hold. The moment you make a promise, it's a trust. That's it. You are chained to that promise. You have to keep that promise. Rasulullah would say the one who does not keep a promise does not have a religion. He takes away a religion from a person who does not keep a promise. Imam al-Sadiq would say there are three things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not give us a choice in, and He did not give us a leeway in. What are those things, O Imam? He said the first is to render your trust and fulfill your trust to good and evil. Whether the person is good or evil, if they leave something on trust by you, that's it. You have to fulfill it. Number two, fulfilling your promise to a person, whether they are good or evil. Fulfilling the promise, whether they are good or evil. Number three, being good to your parents, whether they are good or evil. These are three ways Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not give us a leeway in. These are things that we have to hold on to be complete, to have complete iman. These are three things. Trust towards good and evil, keeping a promise towards good and evil, and being kind to your parents, whether they are good or evil. This is the trust that our Imams teach us. What else do we have other than keeping a promise? We have the trust of every single body part that we hold. These are trusts that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. They are a gift to us. We must be thankful for them. And with being thankful, there are three stages to thankfulness. Another thing we discussed last year. There are three stages towards thankfulness. First, to know where this gift came from. Secondly, to say Alhamdulillah. And thirdly, through your actions. Be thankful through your actions. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you the gift of the eye. It's a trust that you must keep. You must use it in the correct manner, in a beautiful manner. Look at good sides, don't look at what has been made haram. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you the gift of ears and of hearing. It's a trust from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you must keep. What are we listening to? Are we listening to the Quran or are we listening to music? It's a trust, it's an amana. Your tongue is an amana. The tongue, what we say in Arabic is we say it's a musibah, it's a calamity. The tongue is truly a calamity. Why? You see, the tongue wakes up every single morning. Look at this narration. The tongue and your body parts, of course, they will wake up every single morning, and every single morning the tongue will turn around to the rest of your body parts. And it will say to them, how did you wake up today? In what state did you wake up today? How are you? They will reply, we are well and we are in a good state. As long as you leave us alone. As long as the tongue, talking to the tongue, as long as you leave us alone, we are fine. Don't worry about us. We are fine. Why? The tongue is the reason for 40 sins. 40 of the sins that we commit, the reason of it is the tongue. Ghiba, backbiting, is from the tongue. Causing conflicts between brothers and between sisters is from the tongue. Lying is from the tongue. Namima, spreading false information about others, is from the tongue. Look at how many sins come from the tongue. Rasulullah would say, one day someone comes to him, they say to him, oh Rasulullah, give us a piece of advice. You know what he said to them? One word, your tongue. Lisanik, your tongue. He would repeat, give me a piece of advice. He says, your tongue. For a third time, he would say, give me a piece of advice. He says, your tongue. The advice of Rasulullah, your tongue. On the day of judgment, the body part that will receive the most punishment is the tongue. The tongue will turn around to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and it will say to Allah, oh Allah, why is it that you have punished me more than any other body part? Allah would reply to the tongue and he will say to it that it was because of you that blood was spilled around the world. It was because of you that blood was spilled around the world. It was because of you that there was conflict between people. The tongue is a calamity, but it's a trust. We need to be truthful in what we say. Truthful in what we say. What else is a trust? Our body is a trust. Our health is a trust. Our mind is a trust. Our soul is a trust. How do we keep the trust of the body and of our health? Very simple. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it very clear of what is allowed to be eaten and what is haram to be eaten. Surely Allah knows best. Surely what has been haram to eat or drink is for our benefit, is for our health, it is for our body. Surely. Stay away from these things. Our health, how do we keep it as a trust? An example that we live today. COVID-19 is spreading. We live in a place where, alhamdulillah, we have been given education. We know that this is a real thing. It isn't something that a random X, Y, or Z person has come up with and tried to make people scared. No, it's a real thing. We have experienced it firsthand. We have lost brothers and sisters due to this virus. So we need to be careful. We need to be careful in how we act. When we come to the majlis of Aba Abdullah al-Hussain, we come while knowing that there is this virus, while knowing that we need to keep social distancing, while knowing that we have to keep our masks on. This is a trust from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In fact, even the marja'iyya, our maraja, our grand maraja, all of them say, even when you go to the majlis of Aba Abdullah al-Hussain, not a single marja said don't hold majlis for Aba Abdullah al-Hussain, just in case someone wants to tell you that. No, all of them said no, hold it. But while keeping and while following government guidelines. The government told us to social distance, we social distance. The government told us to keep our masks on, we keep our masks on. Medical advice, we follow it. As simple as that. Don't come and tell me about Abdullah al-Hussain will grant me shifa. Yes, he will. And I am the first to tell you that he will. However, he won't if you don't show care from your own side. There's a beautiful story that I love to mention, usually when mentioning dua, but I think it's applicable here. Mary, the mother of Jesus, when she was made to run out of the city, and she ran out of the city while being pregnant with Isa, alayhi wa ala nabiyina wa alihi afdalu salati wa salam, for 3 days she had nothing to eat or drink. For 3 days, nothing to eat or drink. Now imagine a pregnant lady in that state. It is difficult. So she made dua towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. She said to him, oh Allah, some nutrition. Because Allah dua. Many of us have this. Has anyone tried to shake a palm tree? No? Next time you see a palm tree, what do you push it? It can't shake. Now imagine a pregnant lady who has had nothing to eat or drink for 3 days. The narration would tell us that the moment her hand on the palm tree, with the effort down, and she would eat it as her nutrition. What does this show? Yes, Allah will give us nutrition. Yes, Allah will accept our du'as. But there needs to be some sort of action from our we can't just leave that and say, oh, I believe Allah will grant me shifa. Yes, in fact, we say that even his stumble with the shifa. But at the same time, we must be careful how we act. We must